Hi, and welcome to Alive with Chronic Illness, a podcast dedicated to exploring what it's like to live with and not in spite of chronic illness. In today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Maria Garcia. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Maria. Would you like to start by telling us a bit about you and your health journey?
My life as a disabled person started almost 13 years ago, and it happened all of a sudden. Spinal cord injury, a total and complete spinal cord injury that left me paralyzed from below my bladder. And complete means that I can move my legs, I can feel my legs, and since then I'm a wheelchair user. And over these last 12 years, almost 13, I had a lot of physically, I have so many complications due to my spinal cord injury, because it's not just the spinal cord injury and that's it. You're in a wheelchair and you move on. No, there's a whole journey that you need to navigate of acceptance, which is key. It's truly important, because if you don't accept your new life and your reality, your condition, then you can move forward. It's impossible. So the journey involved accepting, adapting, and adjusting to my new life. And I had to make all these necessary changes that I needed to make in order to keep going and to move forward. And I also had to deal with some physical complications because of my spinal cord injury, which means that I always had to deal with bladder infections, bed sores. The bed sores are an issue for me, not for all wheelchair users, but for some of us, since we are always in the same position, and that applies pressure on certain areas of your body. And that areas of your body, if you put daily pressure on them, you're at risk of developing an pressure ulcer or a bed sore. And that can be a problem in itself, because that can take you to hospital. And I had to be operated on 6 times because of that. And that affects your quality of life. And it affects your daily life, because the recovery process is long, it's slow, you need to be very consistent when it comes to medical treatment, medical care. You have to be very careful. So spinal cord injuries are a word in itself. It's like you have to deal with physical symptoms, and you have to deal with the emotional implications as well. But I guess that I transitioned, I can say quite easily, because it wasn't easy, obviously. But my transition, maybe it was easier than it was for people who became disabled when they were really young. Becoming disabled when you're an adult, maybe it's easier, for the lack of a better word, than if you are a 14-year-old person. I was 41 when I had my spinal cord injury. And that helped me in the sense that I was able to accept and adapt much better and much easier, and probably faster than a teenager or a young adult if they become disabled. Because when you're 41, you are already an adult. Your maturity, your experience, your wisdom helps you to navigate this difficult and complex world easier than if I were younger. And that helped me being an adult. And also being a doctor helped me my journey. I can say that it was helpful for me, because it was not always a privilege or an advantage to be a doctor. But I can admit that when medical appointments are easy for me, because I'm in front of a colleague, someone who we share the same career, the same profession. So doctors are usually more honest, more transparent with me. I always ask them to be. I prefer to have all the information that and I always ask them, please be honest, tell me the truth, tell me what's really going on. I want to know, because if I'm informed about that, I can make better decisions if I know. So the interaction with other doctors is much easier for me, medical appointments, or when I had to be admitted to hospital. And also, obviously, that helps me to have access to a more reliable and accurate information about my own injury, about my symptoms, about any kind of complication that I might experience. And that is also an advantage, obviously. But as I said before, it's not always such a privilege that many people might think that it is. I too have experienced discrimination and exclusion, even from other doctors. It depends on the person, because doctors know a lot about disability, but as a medical condition. They know what a spinal cord injury is, they know the symptoms, they know the signs, they know the complications, but they have no clue about the social aspect of disability, or the emotional aspect of disability, or the daily challenges and struggles that we have every day. No, they don't know about that. So sometimes for them, that's why sometimes when you go to social media, you see a lot of posts complaining about the healthcare system and the doctor's attitude and behavior toward disabled people, especially people with chronic illnesses. They complain that they lack empathy, they lack respect, kindness, consideration, they don't pay attention, they are not, and I understand that. They are right. They are right. Now that I'm on the other side, meaning that I am a patient, I'm still a doctor, but I'm also a patient. I realize that medicine lacks humanity. And when that fails, you realize that this is really upsetting. It means that something is wrong with medicine. When doctors are not able to connect with the patient who's in front of them, and someone that is suffering from pain or from other symptoms, and they are telling you that if you don't give the appropriate support, if you don't make them feel seen, heard, respected, and supported, it means that something is terribly wrong with medicine. And I realize that I'm not suffering to the same level that all those people, because maybe the fact that I am a doctor helps me with the other doctors. They know that I am someone to share the same profession as them, and they tend to treat me with more respect, more consideration. Yeah. But I realize that that's not always the case. And it really saddens me. It's really disappointing and upsetting, realizing that many people are experiencing such traumatic and terrible situation when they have a medical appointment, because doctors are not empathetic, they don't even make the effort to interact with them in a more kind of way, in a more positive way. And it's terrible, because disabled people we all want to be seen, and we all want to be heard, respected, and valued. Sometimes, not just doctors, society in general fails to give us that. And this is something that it's a source of frustration for us, and it makes us feel not worthless, but you feel less than. Makes you feel that you are not valued as you deserve, and that you always have to prove to the whole world that you are valuable, that you have so much to give, so much to offer, so much that you can add value to society. But society needs to give us the chance to give that value, and that's what's really frustrating. That's why I said that education is really important. Education, providing information, and calling out ableism, and trying to debunk those misconceptions, misbeliefs, or more false belief about disability. If you have a society that is better informed, that they truly know what what disability is, what it means, what are all the daily struggles, all the daily barriers, obstacles, setbacks that we need to overcome, then probably things will start to change for the better. And it's our duty to do that. Yeah. But I also will say that non-disabled people need to be willing to be informed, need to be willing to say, okay, I'm interested in knowing more about disability. I think it goes both ways. It's our duty, so to speak, to give that information, to educate non-disabled people. But I also expect non-disabled people to be interested in us, in our journeys, in our lives, in what we need and what we want, our dreams, aspirations, goals, and not just for pure curiosity and yes, noisy. No. Real and true interest in us. And then probably the society will start to change, and we'll want to be more inclusive and more accessible, and the future might look brighter for us.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I
why.
think it definitely does need to go both ways, doesn't it? There needs to be,
Exactly.
shift in an interest
Yeah.
in from society. And like, I think what you said about education, and we spoke about this earlier on before we started recording about how it's so important for like children to
Yeah.
have that awareness and to have that representation, and when they're in
Yeah.
schools, and potentially even if you were to develop a disability later on, because a lot of people do, if you've seen that as a kid and you can see what people can do, it might not be as scary when something happens to you, or if something happens to you.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That the education about disability should start with children in schools. You can wait until people are adults to start giving information, educating them. Not because it's too late. It's not. It's never too late to educate people, no matter if they are 50 or 80. It's never too late. At least that's my personal point of view. But if you start with people at very young age, and you make them see what disability is, and if you help them to understand what disability is, and if the more disabled people will be visible for them, because I think that probably parents, I'm not sure that they really know how to explain to children what disability is, and I mean non-disabled parents, because sometimes when I'm a wheelchair and I'm out and about, children tend to look at me, which is completely normal. They are inherently curious, but it's a curiosity that comes from innocence, and very different from the curiosity that adults usually have when it comes to wheelchair users. And they tend to look at me with innocent eyes, and they want to know. And sometimes they ask you, "Oh, what happened to you?" And sometimes parents react in like trying to shut the kid and trying to stay silent and don't ask, because it's not polite to ask, it's not considerate to ask. No, let them ask. That's important. Asking questions is important. And we don't mind if we are being asked about our disabilities. But maybe the problem is that the problem is not asking. That's not an issue for us. At least for me, it's not an issue. It's how those questions are being asked. Non-disabled people don't need to stop asking questions. They need to ask better questions. How you ask a question is key. If you ask someone like me, a wheelchair user, what's wrong with you? It's absolutely, I obviously get defensive, because what you are asking me means that you think that I am wrong, then I have a problem, my disability is something wrong, something that needs to be fixed, overcome, and no. Probably my answer will be no. What is wrong with you that you are asking me that question? So you are being inconsiderate. You are being disrespectful. I feel offended by your question. But if you said, I am curious about your disability and I'd be interested in knowing more about it, can you tell me more about it? That changes historical. It's completely different. If you change the approach, then my response will be in accordance to your question, and I will tell you, and I will tell you. But if you start asking me in such a harsh way, what is wrong with you? Probably my answer you won't like my answer, because I'll get offensive and I backfire, I retaliate, and and that's when the interaction is impossible between the two of us. That's why I say that if children are curious and want to ask, let them ask. And if you don't know how to explain to them what disability is, well, maybe let them ask a disabled person, or maybe you should ask a disabled person about it. And I think that schools should at least have more disability representation, or at least, even if it's, I don't know, once a month, having a disabled person go to schools and give a lecture to a whole class of kids and tell them about disability and what it means and what is not. And if we are visible, the more visible we are, it's the better. I think that's one of the first steps to not just to be included, but also to be normalized. It's not just that we need to be included. It means like a bit forceful. No, we need to have that space. No, we need to be seen as normal, because we are normal. We are not some unique kind of unicorn. No, we are like anybody else. It's just that we need to move using a mobility device. In my case, it's a wheelchair. For others, it's a walking aid or a cane. But the world needs to realize that this is absolutely normal. More than inclusion, I prefer to say that we need to be normalized, not just included. Normalized. Normalized.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so true, isn't it? It isn't about normalizing disability and not seeing it as something that is inherently bad, because it isn't something that's bad.
Yeah.
And when we take that away from it, and I think a lot of feelings, I hear people talk about guilt and shame about things they can't do or that they need support with. And I think some of that stems from the fact that we are seen to perceive being disabled as being less than when it's definitely not, and as if it's this bad thing. But if we, as a society, normalize accessibility, normalize disability and representation, we can start to break down those stigmas. I think everybody would be better for it.
Exactly. You're absolutely right, Elizabeth. And it also starts with language, because you realize that some people, some non-disabled people, find it really difficult, and they feel uncomfortable saying disabled or disability. They think that it's a really bad word or a dirty word, something that they don't need to use. And that's why you sometimes see those ridiculous terms like differently abled, special needs, and functional diversity. Oh my God. It really irritates me a lot. It's really annoying. When I see those terms, I say, what? What the hell is this? This is absolutely unnecessary. Stay disabled. We want you to say disabled. We say disabled. Or, well, maybe some people prefer to say a person with disability. Okay, perfect. Person first, and then the disability. But whatever, disabled person, person with a disability. But they will say the word disabled, please. Nothing happens if you say that. We are absolutely fine with that. What I'm not fine with is using all those really ridiculous and even stupid terms, trying to be what? Polite, careful, mindful. Maybe they think that we will be offended if we use the word disabled. No, that's who we are. If you don't want to say disabled, you are erasing part of my identity. My disability is part of my identity now. This is who I am. Yeah, I am a disabled woman. I am a disabled person. And that's part of my identity. You can erase that. And you won't erase it just because you don't say disability or disabled. That's absolutely, it's nonsense. It doesn't make sense that because you don't say disability, the disability disappears. No, it's still there. But you are making things more complicated. Why are you making things so difficult? Just say the word and move on. Move on. If it's not an issue for us, why is it an issue for non-disabled people? And they need to change their perspective. They need to change the narrative and start seeing, like you said, disability not as a bad thing. It's a different thing, yeah. It's a different life, yeah. But it's not worse, or it's not a drama or a tragedy like many non-disabled people tend to think that it is. But that's because, again, the lack of information, knowledge, education. If they really knew who we are and what we are capable of doing, their narrative and the story that they tell in their minds, it will be very, very different. I'm sure. I'm sure. But it all comes down to education and giving information. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that stigma around it. And like you were saying, that sometimes the term special needs is used, and that also almost implies that there is like a normal need. And then anyone who doesn't meet that normal need is a special need because they need something above the normal. And I think that is a lot of the struggle around it, and with people not liking to use the term disabled because
Yeah.
they think it's negative. And I always find that
Yeah.
very interesting because I use the term disabled to refer to myself. Most people I know who are disabled use that term to refer to themselves. It's only non-disabled people who don't like it, and I find that so interesting because they don't
Yeah.
like to use it in relation to me, but I use it in relation to myself. So I find that quite, yeah, interesting that we as a society have decided this is a bad word, even though that it shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like we said before, it should goes both ways. We as disabled people need to change that mindset, and we need to change that narrative. And when I sometimes when I hear even my friends just going around and trying not to say the word and say, okay, stop doing that. Just say disabled. It doesn't matter. Don't worry. I won't get offended. You are not insulting me. This is not a negative word. This is not a bad word. Just say it. Just say it, just like that. And then they realize the how silly and how ridiculous it is all getting. And yeah, now they say disabled and disability, and that's fine. And that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why having those open conversations can just really help so people understand, and then when they get it from your perspective, it just breaks down the barriers again and helps with that stigma.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also another important issue is the how the media represent us. Well, I think that there's a lack of proper representation, people with disabilities in the media. Or if we are represented, it's always so wrong. And they also have a really wrong or yeah mistaken idea about what disability is, because you just have to see some films or TV shows, or we are always portrayed as the poor victim of a really terrible fate, and always the non-disabled person that is our hero and come to save us, and or like the superhero able to overcome anything. No, that's not real. That's not accurate. Doesn't have to do with any of us. That's not our reality. That's why, apart from education and information, representation is so important. But real representation, not the one that non-disabled people usually usually do when they are making a film or a TV show or a no. That's what they should rely more on us, asking us, asking us for information and for and our stories are being told by non-disabled people. That's why sometimes when you see a film about and in that film there's a disabled character, it's usually wrongly represented. It's absolutely so out of the reality. So what am I watching? Why do these people think that this is real? This is true? No, it's not. So we need proper representation. That's why we need to be there, because most of the time, a lot of decisions are being made without taking us into account, which I don't know why. Why do people don't ask us more often? Why do non-disabled people keep making the decisions that disabled people should be making? I mean, this slogan, "Nothing about us without us," is absolutely spot on. It's 100% true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true,
We,
isn't it?
exactly. We live in a world in which decisions about when it comes to financial aids or accessibility or education or healthcare system or many other aspects, all those decisions about all those fields are being making that being made by non-disabled people, but they don't even consider asking us if we agree with that, if that's what we truly need, if that's what we truly want. Why? We need to have a seat at the table. We want to have that seat at the table and take part. It's our lives, the ones that are affected by those decisions. And if you don't make those decisions with others in mind, the decision will probably be wrong. And hence, you have what we have right now. Look what's happening in the UK now, with the disabled people benefits being cut all of a sudden. Why? That's absolutely terrible. Terrible. When I saw it in the news, I thought, "Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Where are you going?" See, this is a step backwards in our financial freedom and independence. And why this is happening right now? It's absolutely terrible. I can't find a reasonable, proper explanation for that happening. It's like, why do the world keeps doing that to ourselves, to us? It's our community sometimes is. So that's why I say that it's not our disabilities the ones to be blamed. It's the whole world, the society we lived in, that is not designed for us, and it doesn't seem willing to change either. No matter how many times we protest and we organize demonstrations and we set up campaigns to trying to raise awareness about our rights, our needs, sometimes it's a bit hopeless because you feel that nothing really changes. But that's because society doesn't want to change. So it's easier to blame our disabilities. Oh, because you are disabled, you can do this, you can do that, you can do. No, give me access,
Yeah.
represent me, take me into consideration, ask me, let me have a say in when it comes to my healthcare system or my education or an access to a, to a job, to a position. But if you don't give me that, we always be marginalized. We always be a very vulnerable community, and that's absolutely upsetting. That's absolutely upsetting in the middle of the 21st century, and we are still fighting for our rights and needs. We still need to organize demonstrations and in campaigns and need to raise awareness and need to keep advocating tirelessly for ourselves. You might
Yeah.
expect the world to be a more inclusive, diverse, tolerant place. But this time it's absolutely baffling. Yeah, shocking, shocking.
Yeah, that still disabled people's rights are under threat, really.
Yeah, exactly. It sometimes is a really exhausting battle. It's always exhausting. I find it really tiring, really frustrating. Always have to advocate for my needs. Always have to ask for access. Always have to ask for to be considered as like anybody else.
Yeah.
Someone who needs will have the same needs as anybody else. Well, yeah, maybe I have those extra needs because my wheelchair, obviously, it's not a problem, but it involves certain things that I needed to have access or to. Yeah, I know that, but it doesn't mean that you can give that to me. You need so that's and sometimes I feel a bit discouraged. It's a bit discouraging sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And when I am out and about and I need to ask for access and I need to Uh, when I am if I want to get into a shop that has a stair and my wheelchair that's inaccessible for me, and I always find myself having to speak with the shop owner or the shop assistant and asking her, well, would you mind uh, getting a ramp and put in here for me or any other wheelchair users so I can get into your shop? And when you have to do, if you have to do that once or twice, you don't mind. But when you have to do like 10 times a day, because everything seems not wheelchair friendly or inaccessible, it ends up being upsetting, discouraging, and you feel like you don't belong. You feel like you are not a part of the world. You feel that because you don't fit in, then you have no right and you have no freedom. And that is a terrible feeling for a disabled person. For me, as a wheelchair user, sometimes I feel really powerless, really uh, helpless, because I realize the amount of places that are not accessible. That and I also realize that those places, most people don't even think about me as a potential customer. They think when I am there and I raise my hand and say, "Hey, I'm here. I have money. My money has the same value as anyone else, and I like to get into your shop and I like to buy a few items and I pay for it. But if you don't give me access, you're losing a customer." That's when you feel that terrible discrimination and exclusion. And that discrimination and inclusion is just because the shop owner or the shop didn't think beforehand, didn't plan for the shop or any other public place to be accessible. And that leaves us always having to be the ones, hey, raising the issue, saying, hey, this is not accessible. I have no accessibility. Why don't you having to always do the work end up being exhausting? It's exhausting. For me, sometimes it's exhausting. And I got to change sometimes in my hometown. I asked for a ramp in a few shops and I got it. Yeah. Yeah. They paid me, they pay attention, they listened to me, and they got a ramp. And I felt really proud of myself because I got to do it. I got to change that aspect and I got to gain access for me or any other wheelchair user that might want to get into the shop. But sometimes it's really it's a bit frustrating, a bit disappointing that most people, I don't want to say no one, but most people don't really think about us customers. That's maybe another misconception about disability. They think that we have no life. I don't know why, but they think that we have no life, that we don't go out, that we don't enjoy going to a restaurant or to a bookshop or a cafe or yeah, we do have a life and we don't want to enjoy that life. And yeah, we assume that not always accessibility is possible, not always. And I am always very understanding and patient with that. But if it's possible, why not making it possible? Don't make me always have to ask for accessibility. Sometimes it's so nice when you realize that someone thought about me before I go there and I see the sticker with the international symbol of accessibility, which is it's a sticker which is just a person in a wheelchair and with a blue background. And if you see that sticker on a shop window, then you know that that shop, that place is accessible. There'll always be a ramp or any other device that helps you get into that shop. And when you see that, you say, oh my God, thank you. The first thing that comes to your mind is gratitude, being grateful to that person, whoever it is, who thought about me and any other disabled people and said, okay, I'm going to make my shop accessible for disabled people. You feel such a massive gratitude to that person that I always thank. I always, when I see that and I have access without having to ask for that, I always, the first thing that I do is when I get into the shop, I always go to the person. She's the running the shop, and I know the business, and I always say thank you so much for thinking about me beforehand, for not making me ask for accessibility like I usually do. Gratitude is important too. It's important
Yeah,
for
and
disabled people. Yeah,
it's knowing that somebody thinks about it as well, and that they've thought of you and made sure that it's accessible to everyone. Because, like you said, they're like disabled people literally do all the same things non-disabled people do, but there seems to be this assumption that we're all just staying at home every day. We're not going out, we're not doing anything. We're just vampires, and I don't
yeah,
know where this has come from.
yeah. Exactly. Again, the lack of information, the lack of a proper education, and I think so many years of a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings and false beliefs about us. There's a lot of myths and stereotypes about us that needed to be debunked and erased once and for all. And that's when things will start to change. If we change the narrative, you will change people's mindset about disability. And if people's mindset about disability changes, then things will start to change. But if not, if you let them think or have the same beliefs that they have been seeing uh, all their lives, anything will change. And that's why most of them think that they are shocked and absolutely amazed when they see a disabled person going to a concert or traveling on their own. Or that's why they always tend to say, "Oh my God, I admire you so much. You are so amazing for doing. You are congratulating me because I am doing what any other person do for existing, for getting out of bed and living a life that is like anybody else's." Again, we are going in circles. It's the same vicious circle, the same vicious cycle. That they think that we are amazing because we live a normal life. No, I'm not. I'm not. My life is exactly the same as yours. It's a
Yeah.
bit different. It's a bit different, and I have to make some changes to adapt to that. But it's not so different as you might think that it is. That's what many non-disabled people need to know and realize. But they need to know first, and then they will change their perspective on what disability truly is. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a tendency to be just seen as inspirational just because of
Oh, yeah.
existing. I'm just breathing, that's all I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Another source of frustration for disabled people. The admiration part, the inspirational part, we are always inspiring, like you said, for merely existing.
Yeah.
Why? Why are you congratulating me because I'm running errands? Yeah. Well, what do you expect me to do? Mm, This is something that really, truly amazes me a lot. It's like, why do people think that I can do that? Yeah, I can do that. I do exactly the same as you do, just with a nuance, some changes, with some adjustments. Yeah, well, true,
Yeah.
but our lives are exactly the same. And this is the inspirational part is another thing that should be erased. Stop considering that we are super role models. Uh, okay, I accept to be a role model, but only if that helps you to change your perspective.
Mm.
Maybe realize that disability is not what you think it is, but not because maybe that makes you feel good about your life, or because you think that, oh my God, if I were you, some friends of mine told me this, if I were you, I wouldn't know what I would do if I became disabled and I uh, saw myself in a wheelchair. And I always say to them, first off, you don't know what you're going to do. You are not in my situation, you're not in my position, so stop making assumptions. Non-disabled people love to do assumptions. They assume a lot of things about us. Most of them are not true. And I always say that if you are not in my shoes, you don't know what you will be doing if you were in a wheelchair, first thing. If at some point in your life you see yourself in a wheelchair, that's when you will know what you're going to do, and you have to uh, and you need to figure out how you're going to live your life from now on. But if you're not in my shoes, stop assuming. Stop assuming that you know how this is, or or how I'm living my life, or how. Instead of making assumptions, ask me. Ask me first. Ask me. Let me tell you what or how I'm living my life. Let me tell you about my daily life. But I prefer them to ask me first, not making assumptions. Because if you make assumptions, you'll probably make the wrong assumptions. And you probably make a lot of mistakes. And that's what they do. Sadly, that's what they do. Assuming. They always assuming instead of asking and getting information from the horse's mouth, which means us. Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes there's the assumption that just our lives are just tragedies, and they're not. We
Mm,
have wonderful, full, amazing lives. Yes, there are challenges, and there are
mm,
limitations, which are often because of inaccessibility. But I certainly do not feel like my life is any way less than. I feel like there's a lot of experiences I've had, and like this conversation right now we're having, being able to have those conversations and meet different people and hear people's experiences. And this is something I'm doing because I'm disabled. So it's enriched my life in many ways. It's very, very hard, and I definitely have days where it's really difficult,
no,
but
yeah.
I don't feel like it's a tragedy ever.
No, 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 no. Not at all. Not at all. You're right. Okay, disability is not a bed of roses, obviously. There are some really tough days or even tough times that we have to deal with a lot of unpleasant symptoms, medical complications that probably take us to hospitals and being admitted. And yeah, and we encounter ableism, discrimination, exclusion. Uh, that is the negative or the dark side of disability. But there's also a bright side uh, that is filled with so much joy and fun and happiness and fulfillment. That is something that non disabled people need to realize, that our lives are always full of fun and enjoyment, pleasure, and friends, family, laughter, and we always try to balance both. We are aware of the dark side of the negative part of disability, and we always try to deal with it the best that we can. But there's also that part that the world or the non-disabled people need to see and realize that we enjoy that we also enjoy traveling, going to the cinema and watching a good film and hanging out with friends and having fun. And yeah, that's part of life too. And they need to realize that. They need to see more often. That's why I said that if you make us more visible, if not disabled people see us doing all those normal things that supposedly normal people do, they realize that our lives are as normal as them, as theirs. That our lives can be as fun, joyful, and enjoyable as theirs. But that doesn't erase or mean that we are not aware of the negative part of being disabled. There's a negative part, obviously. There's a negative part, and there are moments of really of sadness, grief, pain, of disappointment, frustration, anxiety, depression. Of course, yeah. But many not disabled people go through those negative emotions too. It's not exclusively it's property of disabled people to feel like that. No, there are a lot of non-disabled people with mental health problems and issues, uh, and they are no different from us in that respect. But there's also that bright side that I am determined to show to the world, because that probably will help change the perspective too, and start seeing disability not as the traumatic fate, tragedy that most people think that it is. Because oh my God, you're in a wheelchair now. Your life stops, and you can do anything. You can leave your house. You can have a joyful life. You can no. Again, that's your assumption. You're assuming. You're assuming. Don't assume. don't assume. My life is not like that at all. There are bad days, yeah, of course, like anybody else. But there are also very good days, happy days, days in which I feel absolutely fantastic, and I love to go out and see my friends and catch up with each other and have fun. So yeah, it's a balance between both. Uh, but the world needs to understand and know that there are always two sides, and we have both. But anyone have both. Anyone have good days and bad days. It's nothing to do with your ability. Your mental health is sometimes it not so linked to your abilities. You can be the healthiest person on earth and have a lot of mental health issues, and you are able-bodied. You shouldn't have a problem. But then there are many non-disabled people who suffer a lot from mental health issues. So it's not related to your ability. That's
Yeah.
why I say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the assumption that if you like have a physical disability, that it must be a bad thing, that you can't be happy. But that's absolutely not true. And I
Mm.
think that's a really good and powerful note for us to end on. It was absolutely lovely to have you on and to chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
To learn more about Maria and her work, check out the links in the description. And as always, thanks for listening.